Hello everybody, this is me walking home. It was the funeral parade. I noticed at the end, shouldn't have been filming it. Just cooking my dinner with tea chips frying. But I thought I should record this while it's in my head, eh? You know, like life is all about balance, yeah? And I'm going to try and explain it. Look, they're going really slow. It's a funeral cortege. I didn't realise. Because of the stupid lighting we now have. Because of the shitty LED killer lights we have now. By the way, that Anthony Steele is a dubious character. And he's got conflicts of interest all over the place. I think she's called analytical or analogical. I'll try and link it on this vlog. She's done it, like, shown what he's all about. And he's a dubious character. He's got interest in places where it's weird. It's a weird story with that guy. And I'm sorry I put his vlog out, that Anthony Steele. I was hoodwinked. And I'm sorry for sharing it with my subscribers and others who watched it. But life is all about balance, yeah? And I think years ago we realised it and we understood balance. We understood how to work with nature. We didn't work against nature. When the so-called well, hang on, this is all going to be disjointed. I wish I could do this like a book. I wish I could be like, not like, but like, you know, Quantum of Solace, the Quantum of Conscience, whatever it's called, Matt, and do this in order.
It's always like one person, like Hitler, Mussolini, Saddam Hussein, Fidel Castro.
We always have a bogeyman.
Like 600 attempts upon his life and he never got to it. Why are you having that? It was Jesuit. I'm going to do Jesuits.
I didn't want to get to that point yet, but they're all
back to fucking Jesuits every time who really knew the Templars. People can laugh and deny it and say bullshit, but that's what's happened. They sussed out a long time ago knowledge that they've hidden from humanity, and they've slowly over time taken away our abilities and changed the perceptions and shaped us into what they needed.
They were in Mexico, they were in China, they were in Russia, they were in India, America, the whole of Europe.
What I really believe, I think there's been a few resets. When we've seen walls built, it's like there's been something happened, a catastrophe, and then they've used the bits of walls,
the survivors,
again for some reason, and then it's happened again.
Like an aftershock.
Something's happened, and it happens in different places, different times. And look, Jesuits were in Mexico. They got booted out of Mexico, and they were messing about with all like floodplains and marshlands and swamps and dams.
They'll dam up land and create land.
Then a catastrophe happens. Then the Jesuits come back in and they sort everything out, and then they're in a big stable position of power. Whatever it is, they've got a way of getting in with countries. Like they went to China, and China opened all their observatories to them. Shit, I thought my camera was on, it's not. But as long as it's recording my voice.
China, who already had an accurate seismograph. China already had an accurate seismograph. They knew more about seismology than we ever knew. And then this Jesuit, I can't remember his name, priest, went to China, and for some reason he got well in with the emperor, and the emperor gave him full access to the royal observatory, the imperial observatory. He let everything. So he saw that seismograph, because he came back to the west, or whatever you want to call it, and started making machines. What were the seismograph, this Zhu Hung, I think he's called, made. This is from top of my head. Zhu Hung, I think he's called. He invented the seismograph. This Jesuit guy, I can't remember his name, saw it, but it was large, made out of brass, and it looked like I think it was a turtle, and it dropped balls. It had turtles on it, and they dropped the ball in the direction that the seismograph were, and they could tell like how far away and how powerful it was. And this guy saw that machine, come back to the west, started making machines similar to that, these barometers, thermometers, whatever, and they became known as the seismology is the Jesuit science. You know what I'm saying? They did that everywhere they went. They had some way of getting in with countries. They had something to offer, something they could bargain with, something that pleased people and made them happy. Who knows? I think it would maybe control of the people or something like that. Because when the Spanish Inquisition came, fear. People started fearing. And then we had the witch trials. I've done a vlog, but I never released it, about the Pendle witch trials, which is near from where I was born, my hometown. And that's when they started changing people. People understood about balance and nature and herbs and stuff like that. So they killed 12 people. Some of them were confessed witches, which meant they were like the local herbalists. They probably cured people when they was ill and gave them a few, knew what herbs to give them, dandelion and psilocybin or whatever. They were the local medics, the local go-to people with knowledge. Most of them anyway. Some of them in that Pendle witch trial were just maliciousness. But that happened quite well. The Pendle witch trials accounts for about something like 14% of all the supposed witches killed during the I can't remember how long, many years the period was, but all the time, you know, the Pendle witch trials was a standout one. Gonna have to pause a minute. And see this picture here, right? There's a list of Catholic clergy and it is massive. There's 30 odd places on the moon named after Jesuits alone. And look at this picture. There's something about it. It's like cells, isn't it? And it's important to them for some reason. If you can crack this, you've cracked some sort of code. Because to me, this sign means something.
They could bargain with, something that pleased people and made them happy. Who knows? I think it was.
Yeah.
They had some way of getting in with countries. They had something to offer, something they could bargain with, something that pleased people and made them happy. Who knows? I think.
Around that time, well, at them times we started like the early 1600s, something weird happened. You can go back and you can look at old documents and all that, and they come from 1600s. Anything earlier is dubious. They're always facsimiles of other documents. It's weird. You can't get documentation further than 1600s. You can, but it's dubious. And what's the Vatican holding? Who the hell knows? They sussed out how to control people. This is my theory, yeah? They keep people in a constant state of flux. So we're always like that. We're up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Constant state of flux. I've said this before, and people didn't understand what I mean. I didn't explain it properly. Right? This is like a cell. This is the flat earth cell. I believe the earth is a cell. It's all symbiotic. The earth, I think, is a cell. And look, these are just Jesuit clergy who are also scientists. They're obsessed with it. The Jesuits, God's Marines. You'll find them everywhere, man. Who are the Jesuits, formerly called Society of Jesus? They are the largest religious order in the Catholic Church. The society was founded in Paris in 1534 by St. Ignatius Loyola, a Basque soldier who discovered his faith while recuperating from a cannonball wound. He and 6 fellow students at the University of Paris, including St. Francis Xavier, dedicated themselves serving the Pope as missionary soldiers of Christ. The order was originally organised along military lines under the leadership of a Father General. Early followers named themselves the Company of Jesus and were nicknamed God's Marines. That's maritime again, Marines, mariners, for their willingness to go anywhere in the world at the Pope's command. Pope Paul III recognised them as an order in 1540. Today there are over 20,000 Jesuits, including missionaries, teachers and scholars, what they are known for. Primarily, their missionary zeal and love for education inspired by the Renaissance. Loyola believed the best way of spreading God's word was through establishing Catholic schools. The huge success of a college in Messina and Sicily prompted him to send members of the order out into Europe and beyond to inaugurate schools, universities and seminaries. By the time he died in 1556, the Jesuits has founded 74 colleges in Ireland, Germany, Poland, Egypt, India and Japan. Today they run 189 colleges across the flat plain, with 28 in the United States, including Georgetown University and Boston College. Jesuit colleges emphasise free thinking and theological debate, which is why more conservative Catholics consider the order to be dangerously independent. Vincent O'Keefe, an American Jesuit and a former acting Father General, used to joke that the Catholics believe the Jesuits know everything but nothing else. That's quite clever. Or they're respected. They haven't always been. The Jesuits certainly weren't well regarded during the 16th and 17th centuries, when they were viewed as the most pious and most intellectual of priests. Kings of France chose Jesuit confessors for 200 years. See, keep the people in fear. 200 years, terrified. But as Catholic Europe disintegrated amid much palace intrigue, the Jesuits' obedience to the papacy made them many enemies. Jesuits were widely viewed as conniving manipulators, and Father Generals were dismissively known as Black Popes for their supposed control of the Vatican. Anti-Catholics suspected the order of plotting to overturn governments at the Pope's command. The order was eventually dissolved by Pope Clement XIV in 1773 at the urging of an anti-clerical kings of Europe. The Jesuits survived in Russia and Prussia until the Pope's edict was rescinded in 1814, but suspicion lingered. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell, it is this society of Loyolas, wrote John Adams to Thomas Jefferson in 1816. Adams feared the Jesuits would try to undermine the new republic's separation of church and state. What's their current reputation? The Jesuits are still viewed within the church as the most liberal of the clerical orders with a rebellious bent. Because of their missionary work, particularly in Latin America, the Jesuits developed strong sympathy for desperately poor people subjugated by colonial or military governments. Oh man. In 1974, the Society decreed that its mission was the service of faith, of which the promotion of justice is an absolute requirement. For some priests, this led naturally to a leftist movement called Liberation Theology, which champions a revolutionary class struggle, pitting the people against the powerful and the wealthy. Some Jesuits actually fought alongside guerrillas in Guatemala, Honduras and El Salvador. In 1981, Pope John Paul II, aghast at the political direction the order was taking, overrode the Jesuits' nominee for Father General and appointed a pontifical delegate of his own. That created a split between the Jesuits and the Vatican that has not been fully repaired. Right, what date's this article? Because he is a Jesuit. This is from March 2023. That's the old Pope, innit? The one who looks like that actor, well, the one who's played by that actor, Jonathan, whatever he's called. We'll have a look in a minute, right? This is from 2013, right? The Jesuits are viewed, right? Will Francis be a Jesuit Pope, right? This is what they said. On the matters of sexual morality and the role of women, Bergoglio is the first and foremost traditionalist and not a reformer. In Argentina, he also distanced himself from the liberation theology movement, warning priests it was far too political. Still, Francis shares the Jesuits' intense identification with the poor and powerless. He has called the unjust distribution of God's goods a social sin that cries out to heaven. There's little doubt that Bergoglio's Jesuit concern for social inequality will guide the Vatican's direction in coming years. Like other Jesuits, he has also little regard for hierarchy in itself and the trappings of power. He travelled to work in Buenos Aires by public transport. Blah, 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 blah. Right. Scientist Anastasius Kircher was the first to discover that the bubonic plague was spread by microorganisms. There are 35 craters on the moon named after Jesuit scientists and astronomers. Less well known perhaps is their contribution to the theatre. A 17th century Jesuit teacher is thought to have invented the trapdoor. How interesting is that? Think how often that trapdoor is used on stage for tricks and stunts and magic. And they're always with the poor because they need the poor to keep the rich. It's about, right, it's balance, it's scales. The world is scales. If it's balanced, it's okay. But they don't want it balanced, they want it seesawing, and not seesawing at a harmonious rate. Like, they don't want it going like this. They want us like this. In a state of flux all the time. So we don't know, we're just like that all the time. And then they put the news on, show us horrors, what are being committed by the people who can do these things, and bombing children and people, innocent people who are just trying to get on with their life, same as we are, put food on the table and have a laugh at night and learn about the world and love and all that. No, they want to bomb and kill and maim and injure and frighten and fear us when we should be living a balanced life with nature. They have us in a state of flux. In a constant state of flux, so we are. And they know it.
I think it would maybe control the people or something like that. Because when the Spanish Inquisition came, fear. People started fearing. And then we had the witch trials. I've done a vlog, but I never released it, about the Pendle witch trials, which is near from where I was born, my hometown. And that's when they started changing people. People understood about balance and nature and herbs and stuff like that. So they killed 12 people. Some of them were confessed witches, which meant they were like the local herbalists. They probably cured people when they was ill and gave them a few, knew what were herbs to give them, dandelion and psilocybin or whatever. They were the local medics, the local go-to, not people with knowledge.
12 of them got hung. Some of them were admitted herbalists, medicine women, men.
But that happened.
They balanced society. They were the go-to people.
Something like 14% of all the supposed witches killed during the I can't remember how long, many years the period was, but all the time, you know, the
200 years
was a standout one. Gonna have to pause a minute.